former mayor of Lakewood, along with 11 county council members, which reflect the diversity of the 59 municipalities in Cuyahoga County. The first 10 months have been very busy, and council has been very responsive to the public. That's a very important reason for the change in the form of government. Closed-door meetings and secrecy are gone, and the new county council has made it possible for the public to view council and committee meetings live and streamed on video. They also archive all past meetings on the council's website. They have upheld their pledge to serve as a watchdog to the county government, questioning contracts, imposing new ethical standards for county officials, and keeping in check the considerable powers of the county executive. There have been many challenges along the way. There were early missteps over transparency, the challenge of the council person being intended as a part-time position, and the holes in the charter, which council must now interpret to create an effective form of governance. And there are many more challenges facing county council in the coming months. The 2010 census showed a loss in population in the state of Ohio and in Cuyahoga County. When the original 11 districts were designed, the drafters based them on existing legislative lines. In the current process taking place in Columbus, the legislative lines will look different. The county charter outlines an innovative process for redrawing the districts. Instead of the county council drawing them, the task of reapportionment will fall to an independent commission that includes neither elected officials nor party leaders. Council President C. Connally has a long history in the public sector. She served 24 years as a municipal court judge in Cleveland, and Councilwoman Connally represents Bedford Heights, Cleveland Wards 1 and 2, Highland Heights, North Randall, Orange, Shaker Heights, Warrendale Heights, and Woodmere. As Council President, Connally has made a point to assert Council's charter-mandated powers while creating a cordial environment where all council members are part of the legislating and where Republicans and Democrats have an equal voice in all matters. Under her leadership, Council is earning positive remarks from the community. Another new aspect, at least in recent times, of Cuyahoga County Council is Republican representation in the county government. Of the 11-member council, there are 3 Republicans representing both the far east and far west sides of the county. This has created a new balance in government, and some would say a needed tension. Councilman David Greenspan represents one of those Republican districts. District 1, made up of the Rocky River, Bay Village, Westlake, Fairview Park, North Olmsted, and Olmsted Township. Greenspan has led the charge in advocating for transparency and ethics rules for county employees and contractors. He is the chairman of the Ethics, Rules, and Charter Review and Operations Committee and a spokesman for the wide-ranging ethics ordinance. Our speakers today will shed light on the role that Council is playing in this new form of government. As we approach 10 months, they can give us some idea of how things have progressed thus far and what changes are in store. Please welcome Council President C. Connally and Councilman David Greenspan.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon and hopefully to kind of fill you in on some of the things that we've done in the last 10 months. I think you all have to understand that we actually started out with nothing. We had no institutional memory. We had no space. We had no staff. We had to do everything from scratch. I remember that it was a cold day back in December. We were, kind of looking at different spaces that might become available, and we ended up with the offices in the county administration building, and we're sort of squeezed, and now we're hoping to be able to move to get a little bit more space. We had staff that we inherited from the transition program, and I'm pleased to say that we have a really good staff. We're working. We've hired a couple more people. We had Jean Smotzer, who was the clerk for the county commissioners, and she's been invaluable because of her institutional memory. And now we do have an assistant clerk because, when I got there, we only had Jean, and she had all this memory, and it was kind of like, oh, if something happened to her, what would we do? So we have another person, an assistant clerk, that we hired. We had to go through all the hiring processes. And so it's been a work in process. We had to establish all of the procedures For instance, when the county executive would send over a person to be nominated for a particular office, you know, my experience as a judge and with a clerk, I was saying, wait a minute, you got to send us official letter. We got to stamp that. We've got to date that. We've got to indicate when the time runs for confirmation. So we had to set up the practices for the confirmation hearings. We had to set up a schedule for meetings, how we were going to run our meetings. So all of that has pretty much fallen into place. And as we sort of predicted early on when we all first got elected, by the way, none of us knew each other, so that was a whole thing that we all had to kind of learn how to work together. People have been sort of finding their niches and looking into certain areas, and there are just so many aspects of the county, from health and human services to the fairgrounds to weights and measures to estate tax. So all of these things, to dog licenses, to the dog kennel. So many of us have taken on kind of interesting roles and gone out and looked at facilities. We've gone around to so many different locations. We've been looking at buildings, how many, all the places around the county that the county rents space. I know Mr. FitzGerald has appointed a special commission on that. That's a particular concern to me because, we're renting all these buildings that we probably could have bought 3 times over. I found a lot of places that you say, why do you do a thing the certain way? And they say, oh, we've always done it that way. Well, do you have it written down? Well, no, we didn't write it down. We just do that. So those are the kinds of things that all these procedures need to be written down, need to be institutionalized, and then a lot of the things we're trying to change. There's different cashiers down the first floor for different entities. You pay one guy for your dog license and one guy for something else. So, we want to try and get one a cashier there. We don't have control over the hiring and firing. That's all under the county executive, but we are responsible for departments. Any changes in departments, any creation of departments have to be established by the county council. So it's just been all a procedure. I had been in the legislative branch, and I had been in the judicial branch and not in the legislative branch. So that was a new challenge for me. But I was fortunate to have Dale Miller and Dan Brady, who both had long experiences in the legislative branch of government. The whole process of establishing committees, I spent long hours on that. And as we were told, the committee chairs are bipartisan. We didn't, put the Republicans on the Migratory Birds Committee or something like that. We gave them responsible positions.
We were worried it was going to be fire plugs, manholes, and street signs.
Right.
We were pleased the way they turned out.
Right. So, everyone has a role, and we're now coming up to the budget process, which Mr. Brady and Mr. Miller have long experience in. So, I designated that the committee process is going to be a committee of the whole, so that Mr. Miller is the chair, but when specific items come up that deal with specific things, the person who has their committee will be able to take over from that. So it's been pretty wild for the first 6 months or so. Things are kind of settling in. We all got elected to part-time jobs, but they're not part-time jobs. But I think things have kind of settled in now, and we're able to spend more attention on more specific things. In the first couple of months, we were kind of coming up with crises on things where people would be nominated for office, and somebody would come and say, no, you can't do that, you can't do this. So I think pretty much are in place now, and we're moving right along.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that obviously this is a new form of government. And I'm not sure everybody understands, but we were elected on Tuesday, and the following Monday we immediately were in session in transition meetings, not formal session obviously because we weren't sworn in. So we, and as President Connally said, at that first meeting I had just met some of my colleagues for the first time, and a number of us felt that as well. So for the first couple meetings it was getting to know one another, and then we were learning about the different roles of government and how it had been operating, not necessarily the way it was going to or the way we envisioned it operating, but just getting kind of a fundamental understanding of what government, the way this government had been operating in the past. We were sworn in on January 1st or on January 3rd, and one of the first things that we did the next day was went right to work to appoint the Board of Revisions, because it was important for us to establish that immediately with the 21,000 or so backlog cases. So we immediately got to work The next major task was obviously electing leadership, and President Connally was very bold in her appointments for the committees. And I don't like talking about council in a partisan way, and I know we don't operate that way. We joke, we joke all the time. I mean, don't think that jokes don't go back and forth about whether you're an R or D or liberal or conservative, but when it comes down to debating the issues, those issues are set aside and we work together. We don't always agree. I don't think you want us to agree. And we don't, and we disagree, but there's a matter of respect between the 11 of us, no matter which way a vote goes or which way an opinion or a discussion is handled. But I do believe on the topic of the committee appointments, Council President Connally sent out an email and said, give me which committees you're interested in. She didn't say, you're going to go to a committee that you either have no interest or no experience in. It was a very thoughtful, drawn-out process. I said drawn-out, meaning from the President's perspective. And I think the committee structure, I think the President got it right. I think if you look now how effectively the committees are operating and those chairs that are in place, we are operating very effectively. I think early on, the expectation of council was just don't make sure the executive doesn't appoint anybody stupid and make sure he doesn't spend money unwisely. And I think what's happened is the charter has enabled us to really be, and if you look at our definition, our role, we are the legislative and taxing authority of the county. And I think we've really embraced the legislative component of what we do and what our responsibilities are. And you could see, you know, we have, I know we have a fact sheet here. We've just, this is through August 31st. We've enacted 32 ordinances, 257 resolutions, and 44 motions of council. But beyond that, we've confirmed every one of the executive's appointees. We have appointed the Board of Revisions, which we'll talk about in a little while. But as the President said, this is clearly not, I don't think anyone who perceived this would be a part-time job. It clearly isn't. I mean, today is an example. There were committee meetings at 9, 10, and 11 today. That was just today. I think Wednesday is the only day, and the committee structure or the meeting structure was left up to the chair to determine when their committees would meet. But on Mondays, you know, you could there are 11 committees, and the committees have certain time slotted during the week so as to not overlap. There are meetings almost every day except Wednesday. There are formal meetings, and council meetings are on the second and fourth Tuesdays, and work sessions and special meetings. We clearly, and I bring a unique set of experience to the table in that I've been through this reform process before. I was on the founding city council of a city in Atlanta, a suburb called Sandy Springs, and we're the largest city in the country ever to incorporate. We were an unincorporated portion of the county, similar to a township, but with much less rights and responsibilities. And I was on the first city council. We were 100,000 people, and we ramped up our government very similar to what we're doing here. So a lot of the processes aren't foreign to me. The difference is that back then we started a city from scratch. We had nothing. And this one, we jumped on a moving, I wouldn't even say a ship, this is a moving, airplane, and we're trying to make some adjustments to the course of the way the county was operating in the past, to the way we perceive, the 11 of us individually and collectively, the direction the county should move. And I think we're moving very, very swiftly in that direction. We've made some bold policy decisions with the executive and with the leadership of council. And I think that early on, people were a little confused about the direction, which way we were going. I think now the general consensus when I talk to folks throughout the county is you guys are on the right track. And now we're getting more feedback because I think we're starting to prove our worth to the community. And now people are saying, now we'd like you to look at X, Y, and Z. Whereas those discussions, I can tell you, were not happening in the past.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's so many, as I said before, there's so many parts of the county, like, the county fairgrounds. Well, okay, I just knew there was a county fairgrounds. The county fairgrounds is run by the County Agricultural Association. And we only give them about $4,000 a year. And Councilman Gallagher, encouraged me to come out with him. And we went out there, and it's in pretty good shape, but it needs some work. And so now we're setting up a whole process where we're going to meet with the Agricultural Association. Anybody, by the way, can become a member of the Agricultural Association. I think you pay like $15 to $20 or something. And they vote for the Board of Trustees. But we're really interested in working with them so that we can get more money and rebuild that so that people from all over the county, school kids and people can go out and see animals and the horses and things they have out there. We were at the medical examiner's office last week and got a complete tour of that, which was really very interesting. The county has to provide a space for the medical examiner, so that comes out of our budget, and then we have to provide certain the staff. And then we'll be doing things in terms of like rules and regulations. We found that under the past administration that death certificates were taking an inordinate amount of time. Now, you might not think that's important, but if you don't get your death certificate, you can't get the insurance money for the decedent. The funeral director doesn't get his money. He can't pay salaries. And if you're a small funeral director and you don't get your money for 2 or 3 months, you may be going out of business. So there's these long-range implications. The clerk of courts, they haven't even gotten started on that, but under the charter, the clerk of courts has to be divided and no longer handles the title registration. So, when you go your title, that has to be under the clerk of courts. Well, that's going to have to be a whole separate division. That's going to be a massive undertaking. We have a new fiscal officer, and I'm very pleased with Wade Steen, who came from Columbus, who has experience in county government. And he's doing a great many things in terms of fiscal planning. Mr. FitzGerald announced about a week or so ago that we're going to have a special task force on seeing if we can collect a lot of the money that is due the county. Did you know that 37% of land in the county is tax exempt because it's either a church or a nonprofit or someone that you don't tax? So those people are not paying taxes, and so on their property. And we have a lot of money outstanding in court costs, and we have a lot of warrants outstanding. So I volunteered for the committee both because I had a lot of experience in terms of trying to collect back court costs and working with the sheriff. We did a tour of the jail. We're in the process of having the jail. It's going to have a whole new kitchen. The kitchen that's there now was built in like 1970 something. So we we sent out the bids for that, and we rejected all of those. We're starting all over again. In the new jail, we have to have 6,000 meals, a day. We got like 2,000 people in there and 3 meals a day. And so the new jail will be a teaching facility where inmates will be able to work and learn and also cut down on some of our costs. Of course, we had to approve the sheriff. We approved the sheriff, the clerk of courts, the law director, Development of Human Services, and the treasurer. We just sort of stole away from the city of Cleveland, Richard Stensenbrenner, who had been working for the city of Cleveland and now will be working for us as our treasurer. So, all of these things take time and procedures. And I think we basically are doing a very good job. We've been. I never knew there were so many roads and so many contracts. We will be doing some things eventually. I asked the Director of Public Works to give us a list of what do you do from the time that someone says they want a road here until it actually gets built. And I think the list was probably about as long as this table of all the various steps that you have to take. So we are going to be seeing if we can tighten some of that stuff up and make that system more efficient. And that's really what we're about, making the government more efficient, spending less money. And one of the things that the charter pushes is economic development. So to the extent that we can, we're always trying to make sure that things that the county does in terms of hiring and facilities are in Cuyahoga County, or at least the state of Ohio. We found that a number of children, great numbers of children, are sent outside of Cuyahoga County and outside the state of Ohio, and I'm not happy about that at all. I mean, I don't see any sense in sending some children from Cuyahoga County all the way almost to Philadelphia, for treatment. We need to find at least in the state of Ohio. I talked to one organization. They talked about they needed peer review for some kind of a program, and they said they had people coming from outside the state to make these determinations. I said, excuse me, stop, that's over. you can find at least somebody in the state of Ohio. You don't need to be bringing people outside the state of Ohio for these kinds of reviews. So, that's kind of the gist. We're really concentrating on doing things that are helping the county and at least the state of Ohio.
Well, and I think it's important, going back to the original structure of government and the challenges and the changes from the old form of government to the new form of government. And I'm not going to make any comments on the 3 commissioners, but talking about the 3 commissioner structure versus the 11 council member structure that we have now, there is more local representation. For example, President Connally talked about the fairgrounds as an example. Well, that's in Councilman Gallagher's district. So we are obviously very focused in being advocates for our districts, but at the same time being advocates for the county as a whole. So you're seeing us more engaged. You're seeing more. We've all had town hall meetings. We all go to more events than we probably saw the past 3 commissioners. Just because there were 3 of them for an entire county of 1.3 million people. And if you look at the size of our county government, we are larger than 9 other states in population and the District of Columbia. That's a large responsibility for 11 members and an executive to oversee. We embrace that, and we're working hard to ensure that all residents are represented fairly and equally. It was interesting when I first moved, and I'm moving to some of the topic points here, that when I first moved here 4.5 years ago, and it didn't take much to see that we obviously had some issues going on. When I moved here, it was about the time the FBI moved in as well. I did not come with them, but it was just coincidental that it was about the same time. And I was approached about running for this office based on my experience in reforming government in the past, and I thought about it, and I talked with my wife, and we agreed that was something that I was going to do. And the folks that I was talking to kept talking about jobs. And they said, we need jobs in Northeast Ohio. Well, obviously, I get that. But before we get to that point, I saw the need, and Council has embraced it, and Council President Connally, I thank her for appointing me chair of the Council's Ethics Committee. We needed a wholesale reform of our ethical practices within this county because the residents had lost confidence in the county government. The business community had lost confidence in the county government. And we need to restore that as the foundation before we could talk about economic development, in my opinion. And although there were some advisors of mine were saying you got to focus on jobs, I steadfast on my belief that we need to focus on this ethical issue first. And even as a candidate, I proposed an ethics ordinance, which obviously changed dramatically from what I proposed to what we actually adopted. But we worked hard. That President Connally sits on that committee, and I'll tell you, if you want to talk about making sausage, we were making some sausage in those first meetings because Councilman Brady said, "Where are you going with this?" Because I basically felt that the 5 of us that sit on this committee should start from, first of all, identifying the definitions of what this ordinance is. We needed to know what something meant before we could put it into an ordinance. So we had our first 4 meetings going through definitions, and it was brutal. I will acknowledge that. The ultimate product that we ended up with, the ethics ordinance, we received buy-off from the Ohio Ethics Commission. They reviewed our ordinance. What we did was we took the state's ethics ordinance and other ethical provisions in the Ohio Revised Code that were not part of the ethics ordinance, the state ethics code sections, and put them into one document. So there was one central reference point. So, for example, you would think the whistleblower provisions would be in the state ethics ordinance. It's not. It's a separate code section. So we put it into one document, but then we also looked at other items that we wanted to add locally to the ethics ordinance. So Article 7 has 37 local provisions that strengthen the current state law. So to give you an example, just real quick on that, the State Ethics Commission requires everyone who represents the county, whether you're elected, appointed, hired, to sign off that you've read the state ethics ordinance within 15 days of your initial engagement. That's it. Well, our ethics ordinance strengthens it. We require that you now go to ethics training within your first 15 days. That's new. The other thing we put in the ethics ordinance is once a year you must attend an ethics training class, whether it's in person or electronic, as a lot of companies do. That is far beyond what was in the previous ethical requirements. We also require our contractors and our lobbyists, anybody who's lobbying us, to go through a similar training that's specifically geared towards them. So we're trying to do away with some of the practices of the past and get away from the perception that the county government wasn't operating ethically or fairly. And I believe we've been very successful. Most of the 8,000 employees have already been through their first round of hiring. The contractors and the lobbyists are going through their ethics training right now. So we've made tremendous strides there. But it's important to understand that the state has an ethics ordinance that the county is supposed to abide by, and the county wasn't. So how do you get into some type of enforcement, or at least a watchdog? Who's going to be the watchdog for the ethical practices within the county? So we became the first, well, let me back up on the ethics ordinance. So we now have the most comprehensive ethics ordinance in the state of Ohio, which is something I think we should be very proud of. But getting back to how do we monitor ethical practices and wasteful spending, reduce wasteful spending and fraud. We're the first county in the state of Ohio to have a county inspector general. And it's very important, and the Inspector General is Naila Bird. Her responsibility in the ethics ordinance is that she is the Chief Ethics Investigative Officer in the county. She does not prosecute, but she investigates. And as her agency determines that someone has, or an entity has made an infraction upon any of the ordinances or rules of the county, she then investigates and makes a recommendation to whomever. If it's an internal issue, to the Human Resource Director. If it's a matter of a prosecution, to the county prosecutor, to the FBI, to the state U.S. Attorney General. So we are the first county in the state to have this agency put in place, and I think that's something we should all be very proud of. I'll touch on the other item on this as far as the public records policy. There are some items that we were asked to kind of touch on here. We adopted a public records policy that's consistent with the state public records policy. So we are consistent and compliant with that as well, because we felt that that was important as we move towards a much more transparent form of government, that people understand what the rules are. I believe we could have let it stand, and we just would have been part of and included in the state's policy. But we took it upon ourselves to go that extra step to truly demonstrate that the ways of December 31st, 2010 are different than January 1st, 2011. So those were some very positive steps from an ethical and items that came under my committee that we've been able to move forward. And I think the residents of the county appreciate it, and they're starting to see a difference as to how we operate.
And boards and commissions that are appointed by the county, they're all listed on the website. If people want to apply, it's an open process. We had to appoint people to the Soldiers and Sailors Monument Commission, and it was an open process. It used to be, I guess, like who you knew or something, and now we evaluate everybody's resumes and had certain qualifications. We are in the process of figuring out a way, and I'm not sure we can be able to do this, but if you're on a board and commission, you got to show up, and if you miss meetings, you're gone, because we can't have you on boards and commissions and not showing up. And same thing with employment practices. All the jobs are listed on the website. Anyone is welcome to apply. So we're just setting up some procedures, and we got a lot more work to do, but we're working at it.
And I think it's important to note that in the past government, and maybe I see this, I've got a little different perspective because I haven't been from here. So when something comes up and I look at it kind of skeptically, and I say, "You're kidding. What do you mean this is the way? This is not the way it's going to go in the future, even though it may have gone that way in the past." Within the county government in the past, I don't suspect that there was so much mismanagement in the past as there was undermanagement. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the accountability that we're trying to bring to the table, is that the undermanagement aspect of what's gone on with taxpayer dollars is gone. And some folks may not like, some folks may embrace the amount of oversight that our new council is placing on them. But you know what? I believe in my heart that the reason the taxpayers elected us was to be sound fiscal custodians of their dollars and to ensure fiscal accountability and the most wise and effective use of taxpayer dollars. And I think we're working towards that end.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple other points. I see Mayor Akers here from Pepper Pike, which will be part of my new district. Mayor Akers and Mayor Mulcahy and the mayor from Woodmere and Moreland Hills, they're working together in a possible merger, and so they're working with the regionalism department to get that process going. It's possible. I've been to a couple of meetings. I've been very impressed with the way the cities are working together. And then, as Mr. Greenspan said, people have particular interests. Randall Park Mall is in my district, and so I was able to set up a meeting where the economic development director was out at Randall Mall. He's working with Mayor Smith from North Randall. I'm not sure how far we've gotten along with that process, but I hooked the two together, and they're working on possibly with the land bank doing some things in terms of getting rid of some of the tax liens out there. So these are all positive things, and everyone on council has a particular interest in their particular district, and that makes for things that probably wouldn't have happened with the 3 commissioners.
Thank you. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a special program featuring Cuyahoga County Council President C. Connally and Councilman David Greenspan. We will return to our speakers momentarily for the traditional City Club questions, and we encourage you to formulate your questions now and remind you that questions should be brief and to the point. The speakers are up here on the stage. This is what we like to say. In 2012, the City Club of Cleveland will turn 100 years old. We're planning a number of events and will be actively soliciting support from the community throughout our campaign for a new century. Our celebration begins pretty soon on October 10th with our conference on free speech at the Allen Theater. To learn more about 100th anniversary events, visit the City Club website, www.cityclub.org/100. Thursday, September 29th, the City Club will discuss surviving stroke in partnership with IdeaStream and Net Wellness. And next Friday, the City Club will host the Honorable Mike Rogers from Michigan's 8th Congressional District. Congressman Rogers is the chair of the House Intelligence Oversight Committee. And for those of you who like to plan further ahead, we do have a date for the county executive to do his State of the County next February 2nd. County Executive Ed FitzGerald will do a State of the County presentation. For more information about upcoming forums, please refer to the back of your printed program. To make reservations or order a CD or DVD of today's program, please call 1-888-223-6786 or 216-621-0082. And now we would like to return to our speakers for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphone today is City Club Program Director Carrie Miller. First question, please.
First of all, thank you for the job you two are doing, along with your colleagues, in making this new form of government so effective and responsive. For those of us that worked on the charter, one thing we put in there we felt very strongly about was we knew it was not a perfect document, but it was a lot better than what we had before. But we built into that the fact that there's a charter review responsibility in 2012. I see 1912 on the seal back there. That to see what mistakes we've made, or what did we omit, or what needs to be changed. From the experience you two have had, what recommendations would you have for that Charter Review Commission to improve and fine-tune what we have now?
We had a law student this summer who was assigned to that task and went around and interviewed all of the council persons and made some recommendations. And it was really a wide variety of things. One of the things I think that I'd like to get rid of on the Board of Revision, you have to have like so many Democrats and so many Republicans and or independents. I don't think that we need that. I mean, it doesn't depend on what party you are to look at the property and decide what the value is. I think there's a number of things. I would frankly like to have the clerk of courts appointed by the common police court judges. I think there's kind of a conflict to having the executive branch appoint the clerk, who's the scrivener for the court. There's a number of things that we're going to be looking at. Those are things that kind of just jump out at me now, but we're going to be, I think we have to appoint a charter review commission in the by next year sometime. So we've built on this foundation that, like I said, we had a student from Case Western Reserve who was really quite thorough and did a really excellent report on it. So we'll probably be, putting that together and going to each member and then seeing which way we're going to go.
There probably, and obviously there was a very, very lengthy discussion early on about the law director and his or her role, or that department's or that position's role as it relates to representing council. So that's obviously one of the areas that we've talked about. There's also been some discussion regarding the treasurer being independent as opposed to reporting up to the fiscal officer. So those are some items that we've seen within the charter. You're right, Mayor Akers. There are some things within the charter that were very good and very solid, and there are other things that as we're evolving as a government, we're identifying that obviously you and I see Mr. Kramer here would not have been able to understand or even see at the time. So we're working through it. If I have my charter in my briefcase and I take it out from time to time, and my margins have notes in it on almost every page, just of things that have come up during the time. We may address them, we may not address them, but just challenges or issues that have come up that were either contemplated and need to be modified or not contemplated at all that we should look at.
One of the things that you have in the charter we found very interesting is for the scholarship fund that the council has to set up this scholarship, and it has to be post-secondary. So we had a forum 2 weeks ago about higher education, and should we concentrate on technical skills, or send people for 4-year degrees. But one of the things we found very interesting is in the chart it says that scholarship is to be financed by the savings from the new form of government, and we really haven't figured out how to ascertain that. So that's going to be a real challenge for us. So we might have to look at a different way to fund that scholarship. I think the scholarship is going to be a wonderful idea, and it's a work in progress for us.
Thank you again for being here. One of the things that has really surprised me is the active role that the county executive has taken. Obviously, that role was to be active, but it's far more active, I guess, than I expected. Do you anticipate seeing council taking, one, more leadership in the development of new programs and so on, and two, a sort of check and balance thing that we're used to? Is it just a matter of time that hasn't arisen, or is it written into the charter?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the first, when we first got elected in our first few meetings, there were lots of things that were emergencies that had to be passed. And we felt it necessary to go along with the administration because we wanted to keep the flow of government going. But over the last couple of months, we've seen more things that we've questioned. So I think that probably within the next few months, you're going to see council pulling back on that sort of generosity and letting things go and asking more questions. I mean, we pulled something last week that they wanted passed under suspension of the rules. We've had kind of philosophical discussions among ourselves about everything wants to be passed under suspension of the rules, where you wouldn't have to have it read for 3 meetings. And we're saying, you know what? We're kind of tired of doing that. We want these things read at 3 meetings because the public has the right to come in and raise some questions. And so I think we're going to have to kind of temper with the administration that you can't come in and say, well, you knew about this 4 months ago and then you want us to pass it in 1 meeting. Well, that's probably, I would anticipate that's probably going to stop. So we're going to be saying like, no, we want more time. We want this to go to committee. We want to have a full hearing on it.
And there are some things clearly that the executive under his direction via the charter has the authority unilaterally to do. There are some things that he does not. And fundamentally, if you want to follow it down to the dollars, the way we set up our procurement ordinance as an example, items under $100,000 the executive can enter into unilaterally, without council concurrence. However, if that one topic, as an example, aggregates above $100,000, then it goes to the Board of Controls, which is from $100,000 to $500,000. Now, it's interesting, the Board of Control composition is devised that it's 4 members basically from the executive staff, 3 members of council. So you might think, well, council can be overturned on every decision. However, the way that the ordinance reads, if one of those 3 members of council has an issue with it, it automatically bumps to the council. So we put that check, those balances are in there, and then anything above $500,000 comes before us for approval. So there are some policies that he can do, but if it involves money, it would fall into one of those 3 paths. And outside of anything under $100,000 individually, we have the right to oversee and to provide comment. But it doesn't mean that some of what he does is independent of council. We right now have a very good relationship with the executive and with his staff to work on programs together. Both sides, if we look at it, we don't refer to it as an aisle, but both sides of the hall, the way the 4th floor is divided, they're open doors. And if you were to come up there, you would see executive staff coming down to our hall and us going over to the executive side of the hall. I hope that continues, and I think it will, as long as this level of respect stays in place. And I've made this statement before, and there are a couple things that I don't like ever being called a politician. I prefer an elected official, and I don't like anyone ever saying that I'm partisan, and I don't think council operates in a partisan fashion. And I want that to continue as well, because partisanship implies prejudice. It implies that you're not open to another's point of view based on a letter beside their name. We don't have that, and I don't believe the executive feels that way at all. Like I said, we joke a lot about it. We joke about policy matters. We joke about how things go on. But at the end of the day, the interest of the resident really comes first.
My question has two parts. Number one, how do you deal with when two or more districts or municipalities within a district has competing interests or is competing for the same thing, the same benefit? And number two, how do you balance the overwhelming needs of the city versus those of the rest of the county?
From my perspective, the need trumps anything else. The need trumps the want. Okay, so if there's a need in a community for a service, then the need trumps the want. The big thing we need to focus on, and this has been a challenge, and I represent an outer suburb. From the outer suburbs is there is a sense that the outer suburbs have been neglected in the past, regardless of need. And so now that we have representation more equally diversified throughout the county, you're starting to see more discussion about how do we allocate resources to where the need is. And so it's a challenge, and obviously there's been a pervasive attitude in this county for a number of years to focus in certain areas on certain topics, and we're trying to really work diligently to follow the need. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and we're really going to have to demonstrate. Now, your first question about how do we deal with competing communities within our particular districts, I can't answer that from my district because we talk about collaboration, and the president talked about the 4 cities working together to possibly form a new city. In my district, I have 5 cities in the township. The 5 cities in my district and the city of Lakewood have been engaged in this Council of Governments for 35 years. They have collaboratively been working together, and although I haven't seen many issues, although there was the issue with Rocky River suing Lakewood, but that was before I was in office. But they seem to work things out. And as long as this congenial attitude is there, I'm not saying we should be referees, but I think now that we're engaged in the process, we can really serve a more active role in collaboration, not only with the communities that we represent, but with other communities and with the county at large.
Yeah, I know I had a question early on about how do they determine what road work was done, because we sort of had a joke in council that every road project was in Parma. Yeah. And I was like, why is everything in Parma? But they do have a rotating system within Public Works to make sure that that the road projects are rotated around, so one particular area is not getting in more than the other. So that's probably something we're going to be looking at. But we kind of watch that to see. But most of the projects they take so long. They take 2 or 3 years. And so all the projects that we've had pretty much are things that were started a long time ago. And so we haven't had a whole lot of new stuff yet.
And sometimes if you watch the council meetings, when a public works project comes up that's outside of Parma, you'll see the councilman raise his arm because, hey, I finally got one.
Thank you for beginning the process of reforming Cuyahoga County. I can think of a lot of process questions I'd like to ask, from whether a district council is too parochial and there should be at-large members, or whether we should have nonpartisan elections, or whether we should elect or appoint the prosecutor, and on. But they all go really to the question of charter review. And I've seen that some opinion that maybe 2012 is too early. I don't happen to share that. I take it that you folks don't share that thought. But I'm wondering if you could address a little bit more how that's going to happen. And in terms of transparency, and in terms of the spirit of the charter and the public's participation in creating the charter, how open a process that's going to be to people who care about this government, to have a voice and to have a participation and to know what's going on in the charter review process.
I've had so many things going that I haven't really concentrated on how that process is going, but I know we have to appoint a commission, and I assume that we will, put it out on the website that anyone's interested in serving on the commission can file an application, and then we're taking a look at the applications. I assume that we will have a diverse group that represents the various parts of the county. I tend to agree with you that in my other life I'm a historian, so I sort of have a little bit of experience in like changing these laws, and I don't like to jump into changing things too quickly because you have these unintended consequences. So we've had this for such a short period of time. My gut reaction right now would be not to start making drastic changes until we know something is drastically wrong, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think we're probably there may be some fine tuning, but before we start making real serious changes, we need to make sure that they're the right choice. And these things get real complicated for the voters. It's one of the good things about the take-home ballot, that people can study these things, and the information can be available, the pros and cons. Because things like charter review, so many people don't vote on them because they don't understand what the differences are. So, when we go through this process, we're going to have to make sure that we have public forums on them so that people can understand, that the newspapers give it adequate representation so that people know what's going on.
And as far, you hit a very critical topic, and that's transparency. And obviously there wasn't a lot of transparency in the past versus where we are today. We work very hard and have worked very hard to be as open and transparent as possible. All of our meetings are streamed live. They're all archived. So if you can't make it, if you miss it, you can see it. Once again, getting back to 3 versus, I'll say 12, elected officials, we're all reachable. I mean, my wife and I now go out sometimes in 2 cars, so she can go home. We just had a baby 6 months ago, so she can go home with the baby, and I wind up staying and talking. And that's not unlike any of us. I mean, we are out in the community. So your ability to talk to us about issues obviously is much more local than it has been in the past. But at the same time, when we went through the redistricting or the districting process, which was just completed in the past few weeks, all of those meetings were open to the public. I'm not aware. We've been in executive session for the 3 items that by law we're required to go to executive session in. Other than that, every meeting, every discussion is open to the public. So if someone wishes to engage, there's no one of the 11 of us inhibiting that engagement. You don't need any introduction.
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. The 2 short questions. Given the tone of the county during the election, where all of the transparency and all of the activity that was created around the forums and the interviews of candidates, how many new people 10 months later are coming to the council meetings other than the usual suspects that always show up? And second, real quick, how many votes have been 6-5?
We have we just hired a new person who actually does our finances. He's like really computer literate, and he actually can tell you where the different people who watch our live stream are. I mean, I think we had somebody in Wisconsin or somebody watching it, which I thought was pretty bizarre. And when we had the vote on the mail-in ballot thing, there were like 20 people in Columbus watching us live stream, so we figured they were interested in that. We have provided for free parking at the council meetings, so anybody can park free. We have a decent number of people showing up, and I can't remember the numbers, but we have a significant number of people who watch it live stream. And what was the second part of your question?
6-5
Not very many.
We had a 5-5, and Jack wasn't there to break the tie.
And I can't even remember what it was about.
I don't remember either.
But no, most things, just about everything were.
I think that the most we've come to 6-5. We've had a couple 7-4s.
Yeah.
But that's really it. And like I said, even when those votes, and I mean, it's been 10-1, and I've been the one. On certain issues, but that's okay, and we all come around, and there may be some hurt feelings at times, but we all come around, and work together. As far as the meetings, and the President was right, there are the usual suspects that show up, and those typically range from 5 to 10 depending on, but then topic specific will drive more people to attend. But It's difficult and it's interesting because with the use of technology, it's changing. You know, we had, I think on that one issue where the 20 folks from Columbus, I think we had almost 600 people watching online, and our chambers only hold 112, so that was maybe a good thing that they were watching online. So it's hard to gauge the actual participation, and the same thing for committee meetings.
And we're making sure that all of the boards and commissions have public meetings in places that are available. We found like some commissions weren't meeting, or they were meeting in private clubs. That was totally unacceptable. So, we're not only doing it for the council, but for all the parts of the government.
And one of the things that we did in the ethics ordinance, in the public records, and the public meetings ordinance, policies that we passed, is all the boards and commissions are accountable to the same standards. So if you're appointed, you have to have a public meeting, even if there was some discussion in the past, if you were subject to it. We're telling you you're subject to it. We're also telling you that you're accountable to the ethics ordinance, and to the other aspects of the government, which gives our Inspector General the ability to go in and conduct an investigation into the actions of those entities.
And then every one of our meetings, we have a forum in the beginning of the meeting that people can come in and speak. That's something on the agenda. And if we're going to have a really long meeting, there's somebody that wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda, I usually let them speak rather than having them wait, particularly if we're going to have an executive session or something. If we only have one or two people that want to say something, we'll go ahead. And we're supposed to give them, was it 2 minutes?
They have
3 minutes, but we're pretty generous about that. So anybody who wants to come down, now they're all going to kill me if we have a ton of people coming down next meeting. But anybody who wants to come down and speak, you have your 3 minutes, and probably a little bit more generous than that.
I had occasion recently to meet a friend at the Noguchi statue or sculpture in the plaza at the Justice Center. He was late, I was early. That's unusual. But I noticed how badly deteriorated that statue is. It's in need of rehabilitation and repair. And that leads me to a general question of what part of county government is responsible for our public art?
Actually, what more concerned to me than the Noguchi sculpture is the Lakeside Courthouse. It will be 100 years old next year, and it is in need of some serious repair. And I'm probably going to appoint someone like a commission with the judges of the various courts to see, like how many people work there, what kind of repairs that we need. I have not thought about that. I would assume it would be Bonnie Tiwan with the Public Works. And so that would be the person that would address it. Because I know, we are responsible for maintaining the public buildings. Like, we're responsible for maintaining the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. We have to do the maintenance on that. We have to do the maintenance on all these buildings. But hopefully there should be some savings when FitzGerald finally gets that report from all of these buildings. I mean, some of these buildings we were renting, we could have bought them 5 times over, which is crazy. So some of those savings we should be able to put into things like that. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. I can point that out, and that might be something that we could appoint an ad hoc committee or something to look at the public arts.
President Connally and Councilman Greenspan, thank you for being here. Next year, our largest Health and Human Services levy is up, and Council will need to make a decision on that. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussion of that yet, or what your thoughts are.
Well, I think that the Health and Human Service levy is vital. I mean, in the paper today, they talked about the decrease in income here in the county, and so we'll be having more and more people relying on Metro Hospital for their primary health provider. So I think that the maintenance of that, maintain that levy is vital. There's a lot of issues about Metro Hospital and the amounts of money. There is real questions about how much control. In my opinion, what it is according to the state, and I did a lot of research on this, we appoint the board, and the board then, and we give them a certain amount of money, and then the board kind of runs it. So there's a question of how much we can do, and Dave and I disagree on that, but the question is, how much can we go in there and tell Metro Hospital to do when under the state statute, the board of the hospital. Now, Mr. FitzGerald has made 2 appointments to the board, and I'm very pleased with those appointments. But Metro Hospital is a vital part of our community. It's particularly Mr. Brady. It's in Mr. Brady's district. I think it's probably one of the second or third highest employers in the county. So it's a vital instrumentality that we have to maintain.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, we obviously need, the HHS levy must pass, not only beyond the great services that Metro Health provides, but also the other health and human service functions and utilization of those dollars to those in our community that are in need of whatever services, whether it's through the Adams Board or through Metro Health. I don't know how far to go into that, but I won't. Let me just say this. Yesterday, CEO Mark Moran and I met with the Chief Financial Officer and member of the Government Relations Committee and member of our staff to go over the proposal for the next year's levy, which I fully support and offered to be of assistance to help that. It may come as a surprise to some, and not because I've never been, and talk about Metro in particular, I've never been against Metro Health and the mission that they serve. I want to make sure that the dollars are being used effectively, and we got that assurance yesterday that those dollars are going to be used for indigent care, which I really emphasize, which I really encourage. One of the things, and I'm kind of taking a little different tact, is I've been of the belief through my professional career that if you propose an issue or a challenge to, and I've been a CFO to a CEO, you better be prepared to come up with a solution or at least some recommendations. And I started that protocol today with the Land Bank on a letter, and I committed to Mr. Moran that I would do the same thing because I don't want it to be perceived that I am against anything. I am just here, and I believe I was elected to make things better for the community. And so a number of us have proposed recommendations to improve services, realizing that they're merely recommendations. We don't have the authority to tell Metro Health's board or the Land Bank's board what to do. Merely, here's a proposal that we think may help you operate and deliver your services more efficiently and effectively. So that's all I want to say on the Metro Health or the HHS levy, but I clearly, with the President, I believe members of Council, all support the levy.
Yeah, hi. One of the concerns about the prior way of dealing with it is that issues in dispute might be buried between the three commissioners because they both served as kind of a quasi-legislature and as the executive. How does the process work now in terms of trying to gather information from the agencies to try and evaluate how they work and how you might propose a different solution or a different policy question, and how would that proceed through the council?
Well, we just ask them. I mean, I found that there's one commission in which will remain nameless. They spend 57% of the money that we give them on expenses.
Administrative.
Yeah, administrative expenses. Now that's ludicrous. So we're just going to be we're going to call them in when they come in for budget hearings, and be putting some additional pressure on them. Some of these we can't do a whole lot about because they're appointed. They have state. Their commissions are appointed under state statutes, but we intend to put additional pressure on them. We have a budget every council meeting, which is an adjustment, like an extra $300,000 or an extra $2 or back, and we go through that with a fine-tooth comb. And I have some specific questions for the next council meeting about an appropriation. That, well, wait, why are you asking us for another $300,000? So we have to go through the process, and we probably haven't made it around to each one of the boards and commissions and agencies yet, but we're going to get there.
Well, and one of the other things that's interesting is the way our committee structures are established. Although we haven't established a formal protocol, however, if you look under Health and Human Services as an example, Metro Health and the Adams Board fall nicely under that bucket. Public Safety, the Sheriff's Department falls under there. Justice Affairs, the court systems, and the Juvenile Justice Center fall under those committees. So although we haven't assigned formally, a committee to a board commissioner agency to a committee, they're kind of organically falling into place. And that's the advantage of having 11 versus 3. You're right. That former form of government, the commissioners were the legislators, executives, and administrators. And this form of government is much more conducive and much more akin to a corporation. We're the boards of directors, and the executive is the administrator of technically council policy.
Terrific. Thank you. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to a special program featuring Cuyahoga County Council President C. Connally and Councilman Dave Greenspan. Thank you, council members. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.